Are you an investigative professional? Have you heard about the investigatorstoolbox.com? Check out this exclusive online community for networking, learning, and data resource management. The Toolbox is a one-stop shop for all your investigative needs. Check out our robust collection of forums, our comprehensive learning page, and our expansive library of OSINT research tools. We've just released an app for both iOS and Android, so you can access the site seamlessly right off your phone. We have also partnered with some amazing companies like Crosstracks, delvepoint, IRB, ScopeNow, the Hetherington Group, PI Magazine, PI Gear, MERLIN Locate Services, Parabin, the PI Institute of Education, and so many more. They're offering over $1,250 worth of discounts and benefits exclusively to community members today. Use code PIP201836 and save 10% on your membership. That's www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Crosstracks case management system. That is what we are talking about today. Are you using a case management system? What are you waiting for? If you don't use a case management system, you really need to look into implementing that into your business regimen. I've been at it with Crosstracks now a little over a year, and it's just been a game changer for my business. They are SOC 2 certified, SOC 2 Type 2 certified. If you don't know what that means, it means that they're encryption system is second to none, and you have to go through a whole screening process to figure out if you can even qualify for that, and they have. So you know with certainty your data is being protected. I don't think there's another case management system out there that offers that same ability to have the SOC 2 Type 2 certification. As you guys know, I've been singing the praises of Crosstracks, and I really believe in this product, and I believe you should check it out. Contact Brad, contact Pat, one of the team members over there, and see if it's right for you. Crosstracks case management system, check it out today.
delvepoint keeps on advancing. The commonality search is here. The new data is unlike anything they currently offer and will go in depth into your target's assets and relationships. Use them on everything from jury research and associate connections to business investigations and fraud cases. You don't want to miss these. Visit delvepoint.com for more details. Sign up and use code PIP20 for additional savings. Welcome to this week's show. We talk to industry veteran Harriet Gold. Our subject today is court record retrievals. During the time of COVID, we all face challenges in getting records. Harriet brings some great insight. So please welcome Harriet Gold and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everybody to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. I'm welcoming a guest today, somebody who I met at a NALI conference a couple of weeks ago, or actually it's probably a month or two ago now. I've known about her for years, but never actually physically got to meet her until we met in San Antonio. So Harriet Gold, I'm welcoming you to the program. How are you?
Hi, Matt. How are you? It was very nice meeting you, and NALI is just a great organization, and it's where I've met so many different people, and really part of my whole career as an investigator, I found it very important to go to investigator conferences and meet with other people, and
Sure.
That has always been good and very lucrative and great for my business.
Yeah, lucrative. That's the key word.
I like the word lucrative.
Making relationships to grow our business, right?
It's all about relationships, and my relationships I have with investigators are really what has made me the way I am. And my background is that I started investigating in 1979, and I worked for this company called Equifax and investigate insurance claims.
Sure.
And then I went on and worked for several other companies. I did a criminal defense. I did plaintiff personal injury, which was a whole different side from always doing insurance defense. And then I got into all kinds of commercial litigation and anything really. And then I realized all of litigation was about the same, and everybody needed background investigations.
Right.
So that's when I started, doing background investigations. But
Sure.
Along the way, I worked for a major company's insurance company, and I did fraud investigations. And I've become basically my whole thing that has made my my business succeed is by doing background investigations and doing a lot of things that meant going in and out of the courthouse and researching information.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that after the break, really doing how to do backgrounds and what's more than just, sitting in front of a computer, because there is so much more to it. But before we get into all that, wow, you've been around since 1979 and in business since 1989, which on your own, which is pretty impressive, right?
Yes, it's been a long time, and I can't, and I have actually clients. I have clients and or investigators that I know that I've been working with since that time. It's unbelievable. I mean, there are people that I know that I actually work with at Equifax in 1979 and 1980, and people I've met along the way that actually got their training ground there. And it was a whole go out and knock on doors and find people. And the only way you had of doing something was going and knocking on doors and looking at old Pope directories and finding numbers and going to courthouses. And that's really the way I learned how to do it. And ever since then, I mean, really just I've meeting with different people and meeting people all around the world that I can do work with has been really great.
Yeah. It's funny. So folks back then, right? Poke directory, all that, new kids have no idea what the heck that is. Right. But us, when they talk about JSON and doing coding, we have no idea what they're talking about. So everybody's got their own specialty, their own thing that they're good at. And this is why you have to network and understand, it's better to know the person than be the person, as per Jim Nanos. That's his tagline. I steal it frequently. Jim's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think you kind of hit it a little bit, talking about going to the different events and networking and having these long relationships with people that you've known forever. I think I heard you, I think on John Hoda's show last year at some point, and I was impressed by just the work that you've done and your history is it's amazing.
I think, one of the things was working for an insurance company. I really kind of got a behind the scene look that I now have. And a lot of investigators have never seen the inside of an insurance company's office.
Right. Yeah.
So,
it's interesting you say that, because I do, I'm almost 100% plaintiff. Every now and then I'll end up doing defense, it really as a favor to somebody usually. I don't like the process. I don't like dealing. I'm not cut from it. But I did probably about 4 years ago get involved with something that was quite significant. And I remember having telephone conferences and being in the room, quote unquote, in the room with these carriers and the adjusters and the people that are talking about, their exposure and when to pull the plug on things. And it was so fascinating, because I was like, ugh, that's how these people think. It was educational for me, because it's we know we're going to lose, but when do we pull the plug on this? How long can we hold on to our money before we have to distribute it? Right. Those were real conversations, and it disgusted me, actually.
Well, it's interesting, because when I worked in the fraud department, I sat in the middle of the litigation unit, and I talked to all these people. I heard them all discussing claims, but I also got to see that they pay claims. To give them a little better view of them is that I actually saw them really pay claims, and really on the whole, they want to be fair.
Yeah.
And if they owe the claim, they'll pay the claim. And it's a matter of deciding what the claim is worth and finding the truth. So my job is to give them the facts.
Yeah. And I think that's a reason why we all are employed to do this, right? That's how we all make a living on this, discovering the truth of why something happened. Obviously I have my jaded point of view, just because I'm working on the other side so much. But there is truth to the other side as well. And people do manipulate things and falsify things. And it's why an investigator is needed, a good investigator, somebody who knows how to really get to the bottom of things and thinks at things in a different way, right? And has the resources actually to get things done. So yeah, that's definitely an excellent point.
I also do a lot of plaintiff work, and that's what I'm saying. I have found out I've done criminal work, and really what I've done is I just find my job is finding the facts. My job is getting out and giving people the true information and letting them make the decision and get out of that gray area.
Right.
So they're either doing, I'm either finding exactly what the facts are and proving them, or telling them that I don't really have to tell them anything. I just really give them the information, and because I'm not the attorney and I'm not the insurance adjuster on any kind of case, I don't make the decision. They make the decision. I just give them the facts so they can make a more solid decision.
Yeah, I learned very early on in this business that reporting on facts and leaving the conjecture out as much as you possibly can, maybe you're having a conversation about that, but not in your report itself, is something that'll set you aside, right? It'll, if you can keep it concise as well. I think that's another mistake a lot of investigators make. Well, they'll make a 15, 20, 30 page report, or the worst thing they can do is just cut and paste, 200 pages worth of research, and not have a quick sheet on what all that stuff is, right? Because an attorney, they just want to know the facts quickly, and when it comes to time for them to get ready for trial, to do trial prep, yes, they'll go through those 300 pages. But in the meantime, they don't want to go through those 300 pages. Just tell me. And I've had experiences with subcontractors actually where, I've had that conversation with them like, hey, this report is thorough, but it doesn't tell me anything. Like, you literally need a paragraph that explains like your findings. Can we please do that? Right. So I've had a few of those conversations.
I think it's all very important that you make it, you need to give them at some point the backup information. But it used to be like when I'd find somebody, for instance, I would make a whole long thing about how we found them and whatever. And I realized that really most of my clients need to just figure out where do they live at and what's their phone number, or where do they live at. And only when I don't find somebody and I really need to prepare a due diligence affidavit, do we get into the long story of how we did it.
Yeah, it's good.
And otherwise, they really don't care. They want to know, where is this person now? And all that other stuff about how you found them is just not important.
Yeah, I recall years ago looking at a witness statement that a prior investigator had written on a case I was working on. And it was like 4 or 5 pages long. And it was one of those things like, I woke up in the morning, I got dressed, I put on a red shirt, I poured myself a bowl of Wheaties, I poured milk in the Wheaties. Like, and I'm reading this, I'm going, are you kidding me? Like, how about you arrived at work at 6:55, right? And, the accident happened after lunch, right? Like, let's get it, compact, and really let's talk about what's important. And the way I look at it, even, you can look at it evidentiary, right? So a juror is going to be looking at this stuff too, right? So did you expect them to go through 300 pages worth of stuff? No. If they're asking to review something, they want like a page or two with the summary and just, okay, this professional did this report and this is what they found, right? Good enough.
Right. I mean, I think it matters in all brands. I mean, we've done video. I mean, I've had my surveillance investigators doing videos where they got 9 hours of video. We had it on 3 different people at the same time. We edited it all out and made these beautiful videos that were shown at trial, or were going to be shown at trial. The case ended up settling.
Of course it did. It's your video, probably.
It was quite astounding.
Yeah.
But what we did is we edited out each person. So we had a specific person on each person that was part of a family unit. And then we did a 30-minute highlights of 9 days of surveillance on each person. Right. So it wasn't going to bore a jury to death by seeing 9 hours. I mean, they would have liked it, but they would have all fallen asleep. I always think when I'm doing my investigation is, what is it going to appear to a jury?
Yeah.
So I want to make it easy, simple to understand. And that's when we get into documents, we'll talk about that.
Right. You think of Joe Friday, right? Just the facts, man.
Just the facts.
Just the facts.
Just the facts.
Short and simple. So
That's
yeah,
it.
I think this is a good point to actually jump out. So we're going to go take a break. And when we come back, I really want to dig in further on this, doing background checks, because you've got a really long experience doing this stuff, a certain expertise to it. So any tips and tricks and stuff, we're going to get into all that. So everybody sit tight and we'll be right back.
Are you overwhelmed with your current caseload? Could you use some help with your skip trace assignments? With MERLIN Locate Services, rather than adding staff, you can add an entire skip trace department of licensed private investigators who specialize in skip tracing. Check out merlinlocate.com today. When you work with MERLIN Locate Services, you bring on a valuable experience and trusted extension to your team. In 2019, Investigation Education Consultants added a new affiliate in its never-ending quest to provide quality professional investigative training. IEC is now offering certificate courses and investigative training online. Our website, iecoit.com, will soon offer a certificate in professional investigation for those interested in entering the investigative field. There'll be standalone investigation classes for those seeking continuing education credits, CEUs, or just interested in taking classes for their own personal or professional interests. The classes currently available are Foundations of Investigation, Legal Investigation, Criminal Investigation, Fraud Investigation, Background Investigation, Interviews and Statements, Skip Tracing Locates, Ethics, and Report Writing. Investigator Toolbox members will receive a 20% discount off the listed price. So visit iecoit.com. Need the best insurance coverage out there? Check out SIIS Insurance. Make your insurance purchasing process a breeze by dealing with the leading PI industry experts. All filings for your state PI license are handled directly by their staff. Certificates of coverage to your clients are fulfilled the same day as requested. If you work armed, no worries, as they always include firearms liability in their coverage. Coverage can be expanded to cover executive protection, consulting liability, guard operations, and for cyber liability inexpensively. Best of all, be sure to indicate on the application that you're a regular PI Perspective listener or Investigator Toolbox subscriber, as amazing discounts apply. So make sure you take advantage today. Visit Security Investigators Insurance Solution, SIISinsurance.com. The surveillance issue for PI Magazine is here, so make sure you check out all the great content available in this special edition, available online or via hard copy.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today we are joined by Harriet Gold. Harriet, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. It's nice being here today.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about background checks and the importance of background checks. And I really wanted to cover, I thought this was a good topic, something that you can never get tired of talking about, because we really got to make sure that we're doing things properly or approaching things the right way. So let's jump right into it. So how did you figure out in your career that was your specialty or something that you were really good at?
Well, when I first started investigating, I did, a combination of several different things. I went and knocked on doors and talked to people. So that was one way of finding out information about people. I talked to their neighbors, I talked to them. That's what I did. And then the other major thing that I had, because it was really all that was accessible, let's forget about, this was the dark ages, and I know I'm making myself very old, and
okay.
We'll just pretend that whatever, but there was no computers, believe it or not. There was no fax machines. So the way of finding out information was literally going to the courthouse. Yeah. And the courthouse became my friend because I like to go and find papers, and I felt like people from the very beginning wanted to see papers in their hand. And I was such a paper person, so that's why it's been very hard for me to transition. I'm doing it, but I'm still a paper person, no matter
Save a
if I
tree,
have a
Harriet. Come
file.
on.
I know.
Please.
So I found it hard to work all the time on the computer
Right.
because I still like papers. When I'm reviewing something, I still like print out some things. And yes, I'll look at them on the computer, but
Yeah.
I'm still like old fashioned about that.
So
So
I got a confession to make. I'm the exact same way, right? I love hitting that print button and just having something, especially if I'm doing like an asset search or something. There's something to be said about just having it in front of you on a desk, you know, and just going through and just understanding visually. I don't know, maybe that's just how my brain operates better, but I'm the exact same way. I can look at something on a screen and it's great, but I really love having that tangible thing in front of me. So you're preaching to the choir.
I just actually just did something, and I won't go into it all, but I just like did a case where I was just helping with a jury, picking a jury, which really is a lot of background investigations, which is another topic for another day.
Yeah, definitely.
But I found that the attorney that I work with, I'm like, how do you want the material given to you in the backgrounds? And he told me, I want them in my hand, and I want to see what I'm doing, and I want papers printed out, and that's why I do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe it's just my age, maybe it's just people that are over 40 that didn't, I don't know, but it's definitely something that a lot of people who, if that's how they got used to seeing paperwork in our business,
Sure.
that's how you've always done it. Lawyers, and there's some lawyers that do everything on the computer, and that's all for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I would go to the courthouses and I would research records. And at that time, there weren't computers. So there's these big books that were very heavy. And sometimes to go back like 10 years of records, I'd have to get 10 big books, and 10 big books with someone's handwriting on it. And if they couldn't write well, good luck trying to read what the names were.
Sure.
And there were these big, huge, heavy books. And by the time you got done with a day in the courthouse, your back would kill you, because you're literally taking the books off the shelf and putting them down on the table and looking at it. And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And it didn't just take 5 minutes, it took hours. So then I would get to the actual case file of it all. And the case files you open up, and sometimes there were little pieces of notes in the file from like the judge, or for the judge, or for the attorney, or the person wrote in from jail and they wrote a letter and it's in the file.
Yeah.
And those were like beautiful pieces of information.
Sure.
So then sometimes I could photocopy them, but sometimes at that point, they wouldn't even let us photocopy it. You couldn't take the file, and you wouldn't be able to have, you know, the information right in front of you.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be able to have the information in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at all those paperwork is what I started getting into, figuring all the different things I would find out about a person. So meaning a person would be a claimant that's making a claim. It would be on our insured or the other defendant to find out bad stuff about them. It would be on a doctor that I'm maybe doing a background investigation on. It would be on all different kinds of parties to a lawsuit. It would just be on a lot of different things. Or I'd have to find a company's assets or something, and I'd have to go and figure out property ownership. I'd have to figure out who owned the property. So there was every facet of court records there was to do, I looked at.
Yeah.
And, you know, what differs me from like you hear of people like doing like an employment background check or something else. When they're at that stage, and this is why I'm really not in that business at all, those companies want to spend like $100 to do a background investigation.
Right.
And because of my knowledge of what I do, I can't put my name on that.
Yeah.
because
no,
that's not what I consider a background investigation.
I'm right there with you, right? So I think it's a constant battle between I'm going to do just enough so the carrier will represent me if something goes wrong, but I really don't want to pay for it. I think there's that struggle back and forth. Yes, we're required to do a background check, but we really don't care about it. Just if we end up getting sued, we need to show something, right? So you run into those situations, right? I so many times, and I'm sure you get the same thing. Someone will call you and they say, we want a background check done. Okay, well, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And when they're like, they get sticker shock. Whoa, you're like, I'm not looking for all that. Why is it all that? Well, you need a criminal search, right? Yeah. Well, there's a $98 fee in New York to run that search only before I even do anything, right? So like those are examples of, the costs that are involved in doing this stuff and doing it the right way. Yeah. Can you go online and use some crickety database that may or may not be accurate? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't stake my reputation on that. I wouldn't stake my liability insurance on that. I'm going directly to the source. And you know what? If they're going to charge $98 to run that search, so be it. You're going to pay it. Better to get it directly from the source than getting a third party, right?
So that's what I've always believed in, is going right to the source. So then I think one of the most important things that I always like to point out to people is that the source, you have to know what the source is. Mm-hmm. So where the people coming up now and they really only know with computers, what they see, and this is a very good example. I work for, a lot of different, I work for attorneys and insurance companies, and sometimes a lot of different investigators call me from out of state and they want something done here, and either in Atlanta where I live, but also in Florida where I have offices and I've been working as a Florida investigator for years, or they need it somewhere else. And one of the things that I have to do is they think a very prime company that I work with, I won't name them, wanted me to do some record search in Cobb County, Georgia, which is from maybe 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they said, they gave me some database information to show, well, the person's been in Fulton County and the person's been in Cobb County. And they said, well, go to Fulton County Courthouse. And I said, well, how come you don't want me to do Cobb County? Well, I've already done Cobb County. I'm like, did you hire somebody else? They're like, no, we did it online. I'm like, no, you didn't. And these are people that do multi-million-dollar backgrounds for big companies. Yeah. And I said, no, you didn't. If you just went to the courthouse, if you just did online, you didn't get it. And they're like, well, why? And I'm like, because State Court of Cobb County at that time is not online. And you couldn't have done it. I said, so aren't you interested if the person had a misdemeanor, like a DUI? And they're like, yes. I said, well, then you need to go to the courthouse. Right. So that's a prime example of how you've got to know what you're checking, because some people think if they could check online, they're checking everything. Yeah. And that's not it.
So that's you bring up a good point, Harriet. So people need to understand that no hit doesn't mean no record. Right. Correct. And I think, we get into that comfort level of, oh yeah, I ran the search and there was no hit. They didn't find anything. Okay. Well, what else did you do? Right. So, I think we can get trapped and fall into that, and you got to be really, really careful, because you could get egg on your face very easily, especially if the other side's doing the same research that you're doing and they're doing a more thorough job. Well, when the trial starts and you get burned, that's it. You have no credibility. You have no credibility in this business. You're done.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, my whole business is based on credibility of people being able to believe with me. So if I tell them there's nothing, they believe me. Yeah. But like someplace like Georgia, in Georgia, it was shocking how different it was that in the court system in Georgia, as opposed to the court system in Florida, two very, very different places. In Florida, if you have a misdemeanor if you have a traffic ticket in Dade County, the case is going to be in Dade County. If you have a traffic ticket in Broward County, it's going to be in the Broward County Courthouse. if you have a DUI in any of those places, it's going to be in the courthouse. There's only one place where it could possibly be in the courthouse, in records there.
Wow.
And in Georgia, if you think someone has had a DUI, people just say, well, just check Fulton County. Well, that's fine. But what happens if they lived in the city of Atlanta? What happens if it was there? What happens if it was all the other little cities in Atlanta that have their own like municipal court?
Right.
That's the way a lot of places go. You go to Mississippi, for instance, and Mississippi has all little municipal courts. So if you're not checking all the municipal courts, you've just missed a bunch of DUIs on a driver, or you're looking into a truck driver. Or
hopefully it's not a bunch. Hopefully it's one in 10.
You could miss it. When I worked for an insurance company and I had to go sometimes look it up our insureds, I would go to Fulton County Courthouse and find nothing. But then I would go to City of Atlanta and find that they had 3 DUIs.
Yeah.
And they don't get brought up to the level of the Fulton County Court. So it's all in City of Atlanta. Yeah. And if you don't check the county, you're never going to find it.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult. People, when they want to do a background check in Atlanta, just for instance, you have to go to pick a courthouse. I tell people, pick one, anyone, and maybe you'll get to the right one. I live within 2 miles of 3 counties. Pick one, anyone. You think everything just happens in the county where I live?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you get that here in the tri-state area, right? People live in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. They're traveling all about. And what's interesting,
Boston, there's like 17 or 16 places.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you come to court records in New York, you have the Office of Court Administration, right? That's that $98 fee thing that I was talking about. And yeah, you'll get what's reported, but not everything is reported, right? So you definitely have to follow up and go to the county where that person lived in, or, if it's New York City vicinity, I mean, there's 5 counties right there you got to look at, right? And you got to take it one step further, to say like, yes, I've done due diligence on this stuff. And sometimes they want to pay for it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes like they just want to say, okay, well, what's in the state here? What is a quick check going to show? Cause they think like the other side, that's all they're going to do. So they want to know like, okay, well, what are they going to know about? And I've had times too, where I knew that there was a criminal record, right? The person that hired me says my client was arrested for beating somebody up back in 2002, right? And you go and you search OCA and nothing comes up. And they're like, oh, great. Well, the other side's not going to find it. So, whoa. Where did this happen? What county did it happen in? Let's go see what's there and understand how you're going to lose your case, or how this is going to cause inertia for you, make the investment in doing that stuff. So, and each state is different, which is a great point that you brought up.
Which is why when I report in my reports, I specifically report on what we checked, because I know they don't want to pay for everything. So I'm saying, okay, we're going to check the 4 or 5 counties that I consider Metro Atlanta, but I'm not ever going to say to people in a report or anything that I've done a Georgia check. That's ridiculous. Yeah. It used to drive me crazy when there would be people that advertise that they do a nationwide criminal check, and I was like, oh my God, the words would make me scared. I'm like,
yeah, for $25 too. Nationwide check, $25.
I mean, and they're like, well, even people that at the time, and it was horrible, there were people that like abused records and somehow were able to get police records and whatever else that were confidential. But that's just, horrible. I've always dealt in the strict realm of public records information.
Yeah.
And those records are what are very important for anybody, because it's real records. And when you're doing, and now with social media, how are you getting that? I mean, that's another whole topic of the icing on my cake of what I've been able to add to background investigations.
Sure.
Is doing social media investigations.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But it's all through public sources of information. And not only when you're doing court records, but you're also doing open records with the police department and open records with the counties. And there's so many records that are available. So one of the things that we specialize in is learning where all these records are and being able to obtain all these records, like calls for service or different things that have to do with public records.
Yeah, calls for services, that's a really important search. So we get those a lot with like nightclubs. People get beat up at nightclubs. You know, it's like, okay, was this a problem? You know, like, is this place not offering adequate security? You know, like I'll have a nightclub where there's a shooting or something like that. Those calls for services, really important. Or a residential building with the front door being broken, right? So I've seen cases that were huge cases and they were nothing until calls of services showed that there was this ongoing pattern, and that because of the break-ins, because of all this, like the owners of the building should have been aware that this was a problem, right? And they were trying to say like, oh, you know, no constructive notice or no actual notice, you know, like, oh, no actual notice. We're not going to, you know, cover this and that. It's like, whoa, here's calls for services. You know, you should know what's going on in your own building, right? And I've seen that happen.
Well, one of the big things I've found in call for services is prior battery, domestic violence. I mean, unfortunately, that's a big cause of people getting injured is domestic violence. And then the next thing that they do, I mean, I had a case years ago where I had my defense attorneys tell me, I'm really worried about this case. This back injury that someone has, you know, our prime expert is telling us it came from a period of time, like a year ago, from this accident. And I said, but I'm looking at it. I said, but there's no way this accident caused the injury. I mean, I'm not a biomechanical engineer, but I do know from my experience. And I said, there's no way. So if I'm saying there's no way, I'm not an expert. That's not what I'm testifying about. I need to find out if there's no way, how is there no way? What else possibly caused the person to get injured? Right. So then I start looking around, and I went into the courthouse, and I found that the woman had signed a domestic violence affidavit and stated that my husband threw me down a flight of stairs.
Right.
And then my client took that information, which was a sworn statement from the claimant or the plaintiff, and I took that statement, gave it to the attorney, and then he took that information. It was a week before our accident. So we took that information, that fact that we found, then they gave it to their doctor that had examined it. And then we asked the doctor, well, which one do you think it came from? This accident that was caused this way? Or do you think it came from her falling down a flight of stairs? He finally said, oh, that really makes sense. Yes, it came from her going down a flight of stairs.
Right.
So if you can't just outwardly say, oh, that's not from there, you have to show.
Yeah.
And, you know, like another thing I want to talk about is criminal records. Criminal records, you could talk about someone's past history, but if they don't have a conviction, you can't talk about it at all. You could see that they had something. It might be something you negotiate with, but if you want to bring it up as a past conviction and they don't have a conviction, I've seen people tell me, oh yeah, there's a conviction. And I'm like, no, it's not. It says adjudication withheld, which means there's no conviction, or that it's under the First Offender Act. You can't use it at all.
Yeah.
So that's a difference with what I have adjusters tell me, or my plaintiff attorneys tell me, oh yeah, I heard they had a lot of DUIs. And I'm like, okay, let me look. I go look at them all, and the DUIs that they're talking about, that they've heard about, have all had adjudication of guilt withheld. Yeah. So I'm like, you can't use that. You can't use that. You can't. It's like they didn't have any, they got out of it every time. So none of it's going to do you any good.
I've seen a few times where someone who was charged with a crime became a confidential informant. And it's like their weapons charge all of a sudden disappeared because they're ratting out their buddies. And it's like,
that's right. I mean,
can't
when you
use
see
it.
a lot
Sorry.
of confidential informants, you know they were involved in the crime, but all of a sudden their cases are not there.
I've had that
So
happen a few times.
You have to get to the facts of why their case was dropped and what else was going on, and just keep looking for those records.
Yeah.
And
So,
if you know there's something there, it's there.
yeah. So I want to touch on something before we wrap up here. With court records and COVID and court shutdowns and, you know, everything on pause and now coming back, like, what was that like for you with retrieval and trying to get this stuff? I'm sure it was a nightmare, but talk to me a little bit about it.
It's still a little bit of a nightmare. I mean, it depends which courthouses they are, but some courthouses were literally just shut down by meaning the only thing you can get was what was pre-existing online. Couldn't get in. They weren't answering things. They would send some stuff in the mail, but the courts are still very erratic, and they're still, a lot of them are still not open. It's very hard to get records. They're just not letting you in there. It's just very, very tough. Yeah. So that's a part of our business that really I had friends that have been doing court research for years and years. I mean, one of my investigator friends down in South Florida, and for like a year, they couldn't work at all. I mean, the courthouse was just not open, and it opened for a little while. And I'm sure you saw that the Dade County Courthouse closed down because of something that happened with the towers, the bottom was crumbling, and now they're all in one place. And so that part has been very difficult. So I've just had to do some index checks and let my clients know that there's something there online, but I can't actually hold the file, and I can't get the documents because they're just not available, or they're taking forever to do. And also in public records too. Yeah. And open records. We have open records that have been sitting open 8 months. Yep. Because no one's working. And
I got the same thing in New York and New Jersey. The Oprah in New Jersey, it's been a nightmare. I mean, like over a year to get information on a fire. It's
my
public,
clients
record,
can't, I can't clients. How is it taking so long? And I'm like,
that's
the other thing. So long.
Yeah. So it's your clients, but their clients too. So their clients are giving them the business, like, hey, what's going on with this, right? They call you up and they give you the business. And I'm like, I remember having this conversation with somebody. I'm like, hey, there's literally nothing I can do. There's no one for me to call because they're shut down for COVID. Like I can email.
They're like, well, but we need it. And I'm like, I know you need it.
Yeah, I finally emailed somebody. I was like, hey, time is of the essence. Like, you know, this one particular piece of information is really what the case hinges on. Like, I need an answer on this. I understand that you're not working, but I also understand that this is a computer file. Like, you can get this file. You don't have to go pull anything. It's a matter of you just giving me the information. And I got it finally, but it was over a year.
A lot of times you might make those phone calls and they get even annoyed that you've made those phone calls, and then they get very mad at you. Yeah. So you need to, anybody doesn't think that you need to treat these courthouse people like charms. I mean, I've always just been the nicest, and it's not going to matter. If you go in there and you just have this nasty attitude, I just kind of look at them with the court person and just said, oh, I'm glad I'm not like that. And then you need to be nice to them because that's how they are. And you're not going to get it by being mean. And I felt like a lot of what I've gotten in this time is because I have had people help me. I've had a probate judge step in on a small little town in Georgia and help me go through records that I couldn't find something because it was just the way they were doing it was horrible. And a probate judge came in and started helping me do a search that I was trying to do.
It's amazing what you can do when you have a relationship with a judge's clerk. It really is.
It's amazing what you could do when you have relationships with people.
Yeah, you just kind of people. I'm remembering back to, when I used to do all this stuff on a regular basis, and there was one guy, he would always give people the hardest time, and he was just an angry dude. But I saw he had a class ring at the same college as me around the same time I was there. So it's like, hey man, I'm class on, whatever. He goes, really? I was like, yeah. And then we started chatting. It got to the point where, whenever I needed something, he'd pull me aside and be like, yeah, you don't got to wait online. Come here. I got you. I'll take care of you. I was like, all right, cool. It's like that kind of stuff. And I've told the story before about a guy in a subpoena room that was like the nastiest man ever. But if you talk Star Trek or Star Wars with him, he was your biggest fan, And it's like, you learn how to do that. You learn how to read people, and build those relationships. It goes a long way. And the other thing I remember, we were talking about going through files and all that, is the, $50 worth of quarters I used to have to bring with me to the courthouse to make copies.
Right.
And hopefully
Absolutely.
I had enough,
Yeah, well, now it's more like $1 a page, and you want to get copies of a file, it's just hundreds of dollars. And
you handheld scanners now you can use. Like you didn't have all that stuff back in the day. It's
no. It had a copy machine, and if you had a copy and index, you had to take this big, huge book and put it flat on the machine and make sure you're pressing it down. That was like how it was. Nobody quite understands that, but
you're triggering me, Harriet. Stop.
When it's, and now it's so different. I mean, having this stuff online is just amazing. But I just said that the really main thing that people remember is make sure you know what the heck you're looking at.
Yeah.
And don't think you have it all. If you need to, call the courthouse. Go look at their online information. Go look at I have like an online Bible of all the courts all across the country, and make sure that you know what records they have where.
Yeah.
In Georgia, marriage records, excuse me, DUI records are in some counties in probate court. And you're like, what?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, when I first started working in some of the small counties in Georgia, they told me that the DUI records were in probate court. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, they'll kill you, right?
I'm like, how could that be? That's where that's death. That is mental health issues.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with probate? Well, that's where our so it's stuff like that you have to know. And if you don't know that, you're going to miss what you're looking for.
Yeah. And
that's what scares me.
BRB Publications is another one, folks. If you don't use that website, you should be using it, because that is like the starting point to find out what's available in what county, and then knowing, what to pull when you got to go pull it. So
that has been BRB Publications.
Yeah.
The Red Book has become, I still have it on a book form, and it's a big book, but that has been really the Bible for me of learning court records. And even if you think you know something, it still is very good. And the online record is very up to date, which you do need.
Online's perfect. Yeah, it's good stuff. So, all right. So that's our tip of the day there, our little nugget we gave everybody, and we're going to close down now. So, Harriet, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting. And I hope folks are inspired to go out and do some more research and really get back to things. And I guess
remember, get gold on it.
Yeah, there you go. Get gold on it, right? It's your tagline. I remember that. I remember that from John Hoda's show, actually. John was like, oh, wow, that's a great tagline. I'll probably catch you at the next conference, right? I'm sure I'll see you around. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll catch everybody next week on the next show. Take care.
Thanks, Harriet, for jumping on with Matt. We hope you guys gained some great insight on retrieving court records. Make sure you reach out to her if you have any questions. We'd also like to thank Crosstracks, MERLIN Locate, PI Institute of Education, delvepoint, and the Campbell Insurance Group for sponsoring the show. So please support our great supporters. And make sure to check out investigatorstoolbox.com. Code PIP 201836 will save you $20 when you join. And you can sign up through the app, available on iOS and Android platforms. And if you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com, and you can find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back on Monday with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.